On this AVNation special, we sit down with AVIXA CEO Dave Labuskes, take a look at InfoComm 2021, ahead to 2022, and what the industry looks like from the CEO's chair. All that and more next on this AVNation special.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is an AVNation special, a look at InfoComm and AVIXA in 2022. This is an AVNation special. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host, the young man on the other side of the microphone and quite literally the internet for me. His name is David Labuskes. He is the CEO of AVIXA. Welcome, sir.
Tim, always a pleasure to see you.
Always, please, good to see you. I've seen you an awful lot in the last couple of months, which I am not complaining about, both physically in person and virtually. You and I are sitting down a couple of weeks after InfoComm. You were very, very kind and came by the studio there at the show in Orlando. We talked a little about the show then. However, that was on Friday of the show, and not for nothing, but there is an element of endorphins running at that moment in time, and you were actually having a show for the first time in a year and a half. I asked you then if it was a success. You've gotten a little bit sobered up, not liquor sobered up, but a little bit of separation, numbers and everything, and attendance and everything, and exhibitors and folks that you've heard from. Do you still think, or do you still think that it was a success, and if so, why?
I do. I am 100% in belief that InfoComm 2021 was a success. It is the first time that the industry in North America has been able to gather in any scale whatsoever. You used the word endorphins. I don't know about you or your audience in general, but I'll make a statement. I don't have those type of endorphins running through my body when I'm doing an online event. I think online events are great. I think they're fantastic for distributing information, for maintaining connections. But what was just so clearly evident through the week that we were in Orlando together is the value of being face-to-face. So you have the value, you have the excitement, you have the endorphins, but you also you need to look at the commerce of the event and identify, was there a return on investment for the exhibitors that were there? And with very few exceptions, and incidentally, there's always exceptions. There's never a situation that I've ever had where everybody has been happy with something we've done. The exhibitors found great value in being there, and the attendees that were there came with money in their pocket, money in their handbag, and they did business. A number of exhibitors, shared with us that their booth was paid for in the first 3 hours. Nobody knew for sure, and you can pick any type of reference to identify whether it was a success or a failure. But I think ultimately you sit back and you look at the participants of the show. So that's our vendors, that's the community itself, it's the AV community, the attendees and the exhibitors, and overwhelmingly well received and appreciated.
I want to relay to you a story, mainly because I don't assume that you watch anything that I do. We had on Chaz Porter from FSR about a week ago on AV Week, and it happened to coincide with the timing was around the release of a press release you guys put out about the number of attendees, the number of folks who came versus the number of people who registered. And Chaz relayed a story about he and I, right? The day job that I have is CMO of CTI Integrator out of St. Louis. We had a booth kind of within striking distance of FSR. And Chaz related this to the story where he and I both kind of showed up on the Friday prior to the event to set up our respective booths. And I am paraphrasing here, but he says in general, we showed up on Friday to this ginormous, virtually kind of empty space. If you've never been into the convention center prior to booths being built up, it is kind of an empty space. But even seeing some of where the outlines were, and Chaz's statement was, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Meaning that I have committed our company to this financial commitment, to this time commitment. But then he says by the end of the week, and actually by the time Tuesday rolls around, which is when the booths are pretty well built, and he could see exactly what was going to be there as far as exhibitors. And he says by the end of the week, not only was he glad that he and FSR exhibited, again, they had gotten an ROI as well. And in fact, that has caused them to change some of their design for InfoComm 22 because of the success of this design. He specifically said he had an ROI. You mentioned the fact that a couple of folks have mentioned to you they had an ROI. CTI, as the chief marketing officer, I can tell you that we had an ROI, return on investment. We invested X amount, we got that back. But when you say ROI as a general statement, and you're talking to different people, and different people's ROI is different, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think that resonates with folks who didn't come, who didn't exhibit, who chose not to, and say, oh, hey, maybe we missed out, or maybe their ROI is different than the people who actually did exhibit?
Well, I have had conversations with a lot of the community that wasn't there. I'm not sure how many people would look at me and say, hey, Dave, I'm really glad I wasn't there. So, I mean, we have to sort of
that's fair.
Respect the validity of the sample. But the people I talked to said, from the looks of it, it was amazingly successful. I wish we had come. The other conversations I've had were, this makes it that much more exciting for us to be looking to 2022 and the various events around the world. It's an interesting topic. I've spent time, obviously based on what I do for a living, I've done a lot of research and analysis and trying to identify what is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for a successful trade show experience. And it's remarkable how little definition there is wrapped around quantifying the return on a trade show. It oftentimes falls down to we need to maintain our brand. We need to maintain our presence. We want to reinforce. But there's also lead gen. If you look at the value, here's where I've got to. From the exhibitor's perspective, there's three groups, and as the CMO for CTI, I mean, this might resonate with you. You have lead gen, you have brand presence, and you have sales. And
Absolutely.
There's three different roles and values that are being extracted from a trade show, whether it's our trade show or a trade show on American Sport Fishing Association. You're really pulling pieces out of that in your marketing plan that are related to one of those three. And I think what we're going to see post as we evolve, I was going to say post-pandemic, but I don't know that we'll ever have a post-pandemic, is there's going to be more rigor wrapped around how do you leverage a trade show for lead gen, and where do you have more efficient lead gen in other channels. So if you're establishing virtual channels, you're putting in place your own proprietary events, these types of things, does that in fact give you better or more efficient lead gen or not? I think brand as long as there's a community there and there is an event that's taking place, you're going to want to look to leveraging that event to reinforce your brand, reinforce that which you stand for, how you're committed, how you're positioned in the marketplace. And then sales, that's a no-brainer. I mean, every company, whether they were there or not, their salespeople either were there or wanted to be there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't question the strength of sales opportunity from a face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it depends on the company, depends on where they are. I mean, I think a lot of the smaller exhibitors or mid-size exhibitors were excited to have a sort of a clearer pathway to the attendee than they normally would. I think the larger brands that were there worked through how are they going to be present, how are they going to show a commitment to the industry, and they, again, actually the larger brands that I spoke to all felt that it was absolutely unambiguous with regards to the fact that what they wanted, they got, their expectations were exceeded. And I'm babbling on. You asked me, this is typical for you, Tim. You asked me a 10-word questions and I talk for 20 minutes.
That's why I
sorry.
like interviewing you. I don't have to talk much. One thing that I pulled out of InfoComm, and it is a catch-22, and I'll 100% admit that, and there might not be a good answer here. And that is the idea that both from the exhibitor standpoint and the attendee standpoint, especially the tech managers, the in-house integrators that we talk to, the higher education, Fortune 500, they valued the time that they got to spend with exhibitors. Exhibitors valued the what they considered to be extra time that they were able to spend both with integrators as well as technology managers and AV users. How do you replicate that as you also add more exhibitors to the show floor, which will obviously add more attendees to the show floor? So how do we keep that part that so many folks found valuable, but also again, catch-22 here, as we add more exhibitors, well, then that means as an attendee, I have less time because, well, there's 100 more or 500 more folks that I may or may not want to go see. And as the exhibitor side, okay, great, there is 7,500 folks. This year, there'll be 15,000, 20,000, maybe more in 22. So my time is going to be split even that much more. How do we keep that part that they found valuable while also, returning to, and I will say post-pandemic, because there will become a time where we're out of these woods. It may not be 22, but there will become a time.
Yeah, it is a catch-22, right? It is. I certainly have gotten the feedback from people that InfoComm's gotten too big, and we don't have a chance to have any real conversations. And I've heard that from exhibitor staff as well as from attendees. I think that comes down to personal responsibility and corporate strategy, right? I mean, okay. I think there are one of the perennial pieces of advice we give to attendees every year is plan your time. Identify the areas that you want to explore and focus in on those. Set appointments. Work through your day. I mean, one of the things we all joke about is, how far behind are you in your calendar by 11 o'clock on the first day? And, which meetings end up just being dropped because that's the only way to catch back up. I think that will hold true. And I think the exhibitors, the people that are participating on that side of the event, already are working very hard to ensure that they carve out time with the key audience that they want to have. This comes down to, again, brand, lead gen, and sales, right? And the salespeople set the appointments for their channel. You have people working the stand. So if you're looking for lead gen, the 30-second drive-by of 10,000 people is fabulous. If you're looking for establishing brand identity, you need more time. It becomes a trade-off across the board. I think people find their way through that. And what I tend to hear, most people, even in your wrap-up conversations with people, you hear this reserve time to go to the 10 by 10s, or spend your first day walking every aisle without stopping or making eye contact with anybody, just so you can validate what you then want to go back to and spend time at, right?
Good luck with that. Yeah, that's just not even. I mean, you and I have both been in this industry a long time, and one of the things, and I'll tell him my salesperson here because she's fabulous, but this was Paige Leniken's first InfoComm, right? And even at that, she has met a couple of well, more than a couple, a number of folks in the industry, through email, through video chats, through Zoom calls and Teams calls, and so as a first timer, she couldn't even do that, right? She couldn't walk down an aisle and without running into Megan Dutta or Joey or whoever, right? So yeah, and as much as I understand that sentiment, I don't think that that's practical, at least not anymore.
Doesn't happen much to me anymore.
I'm certain. You mentioned something about planning your time, and I'm going to take and take a slight detour here. Every year you sit down with the board, and the board evolves and changes over the years. And you guys set out, and you I believe it's in December. You could correct me if I'm wrong. It might be January, where you sit out and you say, okay, here's our strategic plan for the next year, and sometimes for the next 2 or 3 years. But even that is massageable as the years go on. When you look at 22 and you look at what you have stated is so self-stated a successful InfoComm, a successful trade show, you look ahead to 22. ISE is coming quickly after the first week of February. You and I will both be in Barcelona, assuming that the Spanish government lets us both in for various reasons. But you look at the next year, what does that look like to you, both from a AVIXA standpoint, but also from the industry standpoint?
From a AVIXA's perspective, it comes back to why do we exist? What is the point of the association? And that has held as constant and defined probably 2015, 2016, but it's been in place since 1939, and that is as now defined to be a catalyst for market growth, so a force for market growth, grow the AV industry. We can't grow it ourselves. The participants of the industry grow it by increasing their revenues, by increasing their sales, but we can be a catalyst for that and to be a hub for the AV professional community. Those have remained constant. Over the course of time that I've been CEO, we've used 5-year, 3-year, and 1-year planning cadence or sort of rhythm. Where we are currently in is a 1-year look ahead. There's too much volatility. There's too much that's changing, and to sit in 2022 and define measurable goals for 2025 is probably not the best use of your strategic thinking. Now, that said, the context of the conversation was completely wrapped around, actually, that's what we constructed, was the class of 2025 when we held the board planning meeting, which actually was in July. It takes place in July each year. And we created this narrative that we were welcoming back all of those people in 2025 and asking them, to reflect on what had happened over the last couple years since they first met together in 2021. So we sort of took this reverse narrative with the intent of throw away presumptions and iterative planning and instead look at where you would envision the association would be and then work backwards to how did we get there, quote unquote, how did we get there through 2021. That process reaffirmed that the real value we bring is being that catalyst for growth and being the hub for the AV community. Now, what we explored in that is, and it's another hour-long conversation, is what is the AV market, right? So that gets us into, if you want, I don't know if you and I have ever spoken about AV and IT and whether or not they're one or the same or different. I jest.
We've once or twice, and I still don't think we agree, but that's okay.
And I think you also have an evolving and changing definition of community. Not only just AV, what is the definition of AV, but what is the definition of community, and how do you leverage the learnings that you've taken from 2020 and 2021 into and beyond into 2025? What is a community? What does a community look like? And this is where the board is focusing in on the audiences that are valuable to our exhibitors and to each other, bringing that audience together, increasing the value of that audience to both the audience members as well as to the exhibiting community, and ensuring that that audience can engage with each other more than 3 days a year or 14 days a year if they go to multiple shows. That's what you're going to see, and what we are really driving towards is being responsive to the needs of the industry. Our content and development of curriculum and delivery of learning, while further enhancing our on-demand offerings, we're also finding huge appetite for the virtual classroom, where it is actually a proctored delivered class, but it's delivered online. And there's resurging demand from the industry for in-person classes, particularly contracted classes. I'm really excited about our certification. I made a quick tease announcement about it during the awards ceremony at InfoComm, and we'll be talking about it more. But we're moving to online proctored exams, so we're not sacrificing the ANSI ISO accreditation credibility of that credential, but we're opening it up to where you don't have to be physically at a Pearson VUE testing facility to take that exam. That's nice to have in the U.S. That is game changing in much of the world, where there are less locations, more difficulty in traveling. I remember having a conversation with somebody at our InfoComm Mumbai show in 2019 that had taken 27 hours to travel to be at the show, but literally had ridden on the back of mules and then made their way to a train station that then they were able to then connect to an airport. So certain things that we take for granted will have broad impact on the industry throughout the world. So it's this outreach to where people are, be clear on the audience, and develop mechanisms to be able to hear what is wanted and needed and moving the needle. And it's about continuing the focus, right? When the pandemic hit and our business model was essentially blown up, right? Our business model is essentially building on that catalyst for market growth in the hub by delivering trade shows around the world, and then reinforcing the services that are offered at the trade shows throughout the rest of the year. One of the key areas we had to get really much better at than we had been was focus, right? What is it? Of the 12 things that we can justify doing, what is the one that will have the greatest impact? And how do we make sure we invest in that? And how do we have the courage and transparency and strength to say, we're not going to do the other 11? Because and you and I alluded to this a little bit when we talked about the 5K at the show. you try things. Everything has a noble purpose, but if it isn't going to have impact, these types of times, we all of us in our businesses have to be focused on what are the key goals.
Yeah, and what is it that the clients and the audience wants?
Right.
As we wrap up here, I want to hone in on the catalyst and the hub statements. If you had a magic wand and you could wave that magic wand and say, this is happened, Dave Labuskes can make this happen tomorrow, in relation to the hub, in relation to the catalyst conversation, what would you do?
Are you trying to set me up to get fired again, Tim?
No, I'm not trying to get you.
That's what you're doing. You think I'll ever forget that?
Good night.
I see the potential for a virtual community that is reinforced by the physical events that reinforce the virtual community, and I would like to see that exist. I think we can create the potential for that, and we'll be talking a lot about that in 2022. But talking about it and making it work, actually making it exist, is the same as essentially starting a new show, a new event. You have to attract people to participate in it. You have to attract people that will deliver a reason for people to participate. This is the sort of another conversation I've had since 2013, which is architects, engineers, people don't understand the value of CTSD, that we should be promoting that more. We should be promoting the CTS to the buying community so that when you get your CTS, you are instantly recognized as having the expertise that you should have. And the challenge there is if you don't have any CTS holders in a region, then it's pretty hard to promote people that hold a CTS, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't have anybody asking for a CTS from the AV profession, then there's no motivation to get your CTS, right? So it's a chicken and the egg type thing. The same is in place for a virtual community. The same is in place for leveraging. But I think that creates an environment where providers will have an opportunity to differentiate themselves. Buyers will have an opportunity to learn about the standards, to learn about a CTS, to learn what a CTS means from CTS holders, not from AVIXA, this non-entity, this association. I think if you can gather the voices that have something to say with those who are searching for information, you create the genesis of a community. And then if you reinforce that, like Paige experienced, walking down the halls or the aisles and being able to reinforce those virtual relationships with physical relationships, you create an environment where you truly are the hub for the AV profession and you truly are a catalyst for market growth.
That'll be a great place to stop. Thank you, sir, so much. Dave Labuskes, CEO of AVIXA. How do people connect with you or AVIXA, sir?
They can email me at dlabuskes@avixa.org. Our webpage is www.avixa.org. I'm on social media as David Labuskes, Twitter at David Labuskes. You as evidenced, people can find me, and I'm here to hear from them.
And if you can't find him, you can call me, and I'll point you.
That's right.
Especially the Twitters. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
For us, for AVNation, go by our website, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find programs like this and a host of others, including our 2 weekly programs. One is called AV Week. It looks like at the commercial side of the industry, and Resi Week looks at the residential side. All that and more at AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv.